This is Hannah from TPAS Cymru. I'm the Net Zero Engagement Officer at TPAS Cymru, and I wanted to fill you in on a session that David and I had the opportunity to be invited to this week. We are both invited to our Tenants Network, which we run monthly, and we wanted to bring a little net zero decarb spin on it. And so many people loved the Bothered Not Bothered session that we ran at our 2022 conference, and so we figured that we would do the same sort of thing, but with net zero. And so I wanted to take you through some of the questions and topics that we discussed, and then also discuss what the tenants thought, if they agreed or disagreed or were unsure with a certain statement. The first one that we asked was, tenants should pay higher rents if they have better energy efficiency and therefore lower energy costs. And interestingly enough, after lots of discussion, tenants disagreed with this. The next topic said, tenant consultations slow down decarb work on homes and add more costs. And so what we were asking in this question is, should tenants be consulted with before work is done, or should a plan be put into place, and should it just be done swiftly? So unsurprisingly, tenants said they disagreed with this statement, and they believe that tenants should be consulted before any work is done. The next topic in question said, water rates should be abolished as part of climate change. And so for this question and statement, we discussed what water rates did for Wales, what water meters did for people who would benefit and be challenged by the abolishment of water rates. And ultimately, again, after lots of conversation and lots of discussion on this, tenants said that they disagreed with this statement, and they thought that water rates should still be in effect. The next sentence says, all rental homes should have up-to-date EPC, that is energy performance certificates, EPC scores every 3 years or after major works. And this question was interesting because it was not really a yes or no. A lot of the tenants were asking, or were making comments such as, well, I don't know about every 3 years, but what about every 7 years? What about every 5 years? And what does it take resource-wise to have these certificates being redone every 3 years, which is quite frequent. Most homes won't have any major works done during that amount of time. So after going around and speaking with tenants about what they thought, they ultimately said they were unsure. So some people abstained from voting because they were so on the fence. And that's what we love about the Bothered Not Bothered sessions, is that the topics are usually not controversial, but you could go either way. And it was interesting to see both sides of the argument and see where people were falling. This statement was, tenants should be able to say no to energy improvements and net zero works. And this was the idea that tenants are the ones living in the homes. They're the ones who will be, living with these systems, and some of it is, there's not the most evidence, some would say, that it's benefiting tenants. Depends on who you ask. And so we really wanted to see what tenants thought, if they should have a say and if they could reject the works. So tenants said that they agreed that they should be able to say no to net zero works. And what I found really interesting here was that there was a real skepticism towards staff, towards the experts that are running the net zero research in housing, and there was a belief that no matter what was done, that it was not going to be beneficial for the tenants. So I think it's just something really to think about and chew on, and look at the perceptions of what staff think about, or what tenants think about net zero. The next statement was about individuality versus the greater good. So this says tenants should be able to choose which net zero solution they prefer. And so the idea behind this was that tenants would be given maybe 2 or 3 options, research behind the different systems, and then they could decide which one they wanted for their homes. And there was arguments from both sides. Some people said that they thought they would be the best one to choose. Others said that the experts, as they said, the experts can't even decide what's best for the tenants, so how could the tenants know? And so there was, again, a lot of back and forth kind of conversations on this question. It really got people thinking. But ultimately, they said that they agreed. So that was quite an interesting one. Next, we said water butts should be required in every property, and this is already something that is coming to standards, we think, if it gets passed by WHQS 2, and a lot of tenants, weren't aware of that. They had problems with what happens if you're in a flat and how many, water butts will there be in a certain block, and people aren't going to use it. So they were unsure, even though we said this is going to be coming to you soon. So I thought that was very interesting to see what tenants thought about that. And then next, I think we're almost getting to the end. We said gas boilers should be removed after a fixed date, even if they still work okay. And so by fixed date, we mean, say in 5 years, that it's, April 20th, 2028, gas boilers are done. They're not going to be replaced. And this again had lots of back and forth, because what the statement is saying is that even if gas boilers work in 5 years, when that fixed date would be, that they should still be replaced. And so tenants were unsure about, again, the benefits of doing this, and also if something's working, then what are the sustainable practices that we're doing by just throwing out something that works completely fine. Ultimately, tenants agreed, and they thought that to be on track for net zero and to keep up with the goals and the targets, that we would have to be quicker and do quicker. And this is the last question and last statement that we said. It says net zero solutions need to consider the future renters. And interesting, I'm going to say what the tenant said first, and then I'll go back. Tenants were unsure with this. And this was interesting because some of the tenants said, well, we don't know when there will be future renters, and we don't know what their needs will be, and maybe there's going to be major works done anyways, so I should be prioritized. And then others said, one tenant in particular said, net zero is for the future, so we should be thinking about the future. So overall, I think that it was, fascinating to listen to tenants, hear how their thoughts were working, hear about the perceptions of net zero, and listening to what they really think and what they really feel. So I'm so happy that we were invited to this Tenants Network, and it was just a joy, and it was so many discussions were sparked and things that I hadn't really thought of. So I think overall it always just shows what we can do to be better and to be clear in our communication with tenants, and what staff can do to make sure that they're on the right track for net zero. So thanks, Helen, for inviting me and David to the Tenants Network, and I hope you enjoyed this little roundup of what we learned at our Bothered Not Bothered session. And if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. My email is hannah@tpass.cumry, and on Twitter I am at hannah_tpasscumry. So leave any comments or questions. Thank you.